how are things in Nashville?
They're okay. Yeah, people are kind of getting out and about over here. It's kind of weird. Like around my neighborhood, people are in restaurants eating. So it seems like it's a bit of like a free for all. I've been pretty locked down still.
Yeah, well, I
But
guess
it's,
it must be hard to be locked down in the summertime.
yeah, I think people are finding it hard. And now it's turning into fall. Like yesterday felt like the first day of fall. It's cooling down, which is really nice.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's
yeah.
good at least.
Here it's the opposite. It's winter getting to be spring, so
Right.
we'll
It's
have to see
warming
what
up for
happens.
you.
You were here last year, right?
Yeah, I was in, I think it was September or October I came over, and that was amazing.
Yeah, the tuning fork you played at a show. Yeah.
Yeah,
So you've got a new album out.
I
Uh,
do.
it's it's a covers album, and for someone who's kind of an Americana artist, doesn't the selections wouldn't fit the normal criteria. So you've got everybody from FKA Twigs to Rancid to the Grateful Dead
Yeah.
in there. So what caused you to come up with the idea of this album, and how did you choose what songs to do?
Yeah, well, the album came about in during quarantine. I had been staying with the producer Tony Berg, who ended up producing the record. I was staying with him in LA right before quarantine started, and it was in this weird period where I was home in Nashville and there was a big tornado. It like destroyed a lot of neighborhoods and houses near me in Nashville. And then a couple days after that, I flew to LA to meet with Tony as a potential producer. And yeah, it was just such a weird time to leave home when I wanted to stay and like just stay with the community and help out. And then I got the call that all the gigs were getting canceled and I needed to fly back home. So once I got back to Nashville, I just felt really overwhelmed and didn't know quite what to do creatively. And I was really grateful to still have my house and like still be
Right.
able to make music, but I just felt so overwhelmed. So I found myself going back to these songs and just songs that had helped me. And I really wanted to share something with the world that maybe could help other people in the same
Cool,
way.
cool. Well,
So Tony and I started working on it remotely.
yeah. So how did you and Tony work remotely? What did you talk to him about, and what did he kind of get from you as far as instructions of how to make this record?
Yeah, well, we like went through so many different songs and landed on these 10 songs. And that was the first part of the process, which was probably it took the longest to just settle on songs. We both wanted it to be only songs that both of us really loved. Most of the songs were ones I brought to the table and songs that I just kind of like loved throughout my life, kind of picked out as some of my favorites. But the other criteria was that we just felt like we wanted it to be songs that I could put my own spin on and like
Right.
really bring a new meaning to or new life to or just kind of new perspective to. So I think that's why we ended up with such an eclectic array of artists that people wouldn't necessarily think of when they think of me, but it's artists that I really love. And then I started recording just using like simple recording gear and Pro Tools in my house, recording my vocals and guitar and sending it to Tony, and he would send it off to other musicians who recorded in their home studios. So I engineered my parts and then he kind of like fit it all together.
Right, right. And I imagine that previously, when you've done your vocals, you've done it in a studio and had a producer there and other
Yeah.
people, and they're giving their input. So what was it
Yeah.
like just working on your own like that?
It was interesting. It was like a lot more frustrating in some ways just because like all the gear side of things would get in the way of making music. Like I'd be trying to set up my mics and Pro Tools and then it wouldn't be running properly, or I'd forget to press play, or I'd run into
Right.
some sort of issue and have to redo everything. But then in another way, it was really freeing because I could just do it alone in my room whenever I wanted to and nobody was listening. I could try different things out with my singing and guitar playing and not have the pressure of like, oh my God, I have 5 days in the studio that we're paying for and like I have to get everything done and there's like 10 people in the control room listening to every note and like critiquing and taking notes on their notepads. So in a way it was really freeing just to do it by myself and then send it off to Tony. And once I sent it off, I kind of like felt like I was just releasing it and letting him
Right.
think about it. And sometimes he would be like, hey, I need you to redo all of this. I don't think it's working. But it just felt good to kind of like do my parts and then send it off.
Off it goes.
Yeah.
So when you heard the finished results, what was your reaction? Were there any surprises or?
Yeah, pretty much everything was a surprise. I only really heard some of the tracks with drums and some with bass, but I didn't hear any of the full band stuff until it was all done and we were like ready to start mixing. And yeah, everything was a surprise. It was so different than other music I've made, and I knew that Tony would bring like a really new and interesting sound to my music, but it was just really cool to hear it all together. So it was like I was anxiously awaiting it because after sending, I kind of got used to hearing the songs just with me playing them, and then
Right.
hearing it with the full band was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Super cool.
Now, like you said, there's an eclectic mix here, and I think the one that stands out and turns out probably to be my favorite on the album is your cover of Rancid's Olympia,
Oh,
Washington.
thank
So,
you.
what caused you to think that you should do that?
That was kind of, well, that song I loved when I was in middle school, and I played it with my friends. We had like a little rock band in middle school, and they're from the Bay Area, and I grew up in Palo Alto, like right
Uh-huh.
around where they are from. So I think like I was a little bit young to like listen to them in the 90s, but like my friends had older siblings, I had older cousins that listened to them, and they were just kind of part of the Bay Area music scene. So I listened to them a lot in middle school, and we would cover their songs. And then I was playing in Olympia, Washington, and that song just like popped back into my head that day, and we played it at
Right.
the show. And then I played it on tour with my friend Catch Secor. I showed it to him, and it just fit nicely into our set. So I had him sing harmony on it for this album. And
Oh, I was going to
yeah,
ask you who was that was singing on it.
yeah, it's Catch from Old Crow
Yeah.
Medicine Show.
Yeah.
And yeah, and he loves punk rock too, but he hadn't really gotten into Rancid because he wasn't from the West Coast. So it was fun to show him that song and then get to play it together.
And it's interesting, you can actually understand the words when you sing it.
Yeah, I went back and listened to their version. I'm like, wow, my version is a lot different.
But it really brings out the melody, and it shows that it's a great song.
It's a beautiful melody, and the lyrics are so cool. And yeah, and it really works in a folk situation. I mean, it's like 3 chords. It's basically, it can totally be a folk song.
Right. And I mean, doing "She's a Rainbow" by the Rolling Stones is cool, and you kind of think that, well, yeah, and even the Grateful Dead. But the other one that kind of stuck out is the Arthur Russell, "A Little Lost."
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and I'm wondering how you knew that song and why you decided to record it.
Yeah, that song by Arthur Russell I discovered, I think I was in college when I discovered it, and I had friends who listened to Arthur Russell, but I had never heard of him, and that was the first one I heard by him, and I just loved the, like, just kind of like the innocence and the vulnerability of the song. Like, he's really putting his heart out there, and I find that in his music he's just so true to himself always, and so his songs are so like full of love, and that one especially to me really spoke to me. I love the melody, and the lyrics as well are so amazing. So I really wanted to record that one because I love his music so much, and he passed away kind of like, I feel like he passed away too soon, and I really want more people to go back and listen to his music because it's so wonderful.
Yeah. And there's like some strings and maybe a cello, I'm not sure, on that track.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's some string parts, and his cello playing is so amazing on the original version of that one. I tried to like honor that a little bit with my guitar playing.
Excellent. So doing other people's songs like this, I mean, you mentioned that you've done covers in the past, but since you've been doing your own stuff, does it change the way you approach recording and singing and playing your guitar when you're doing other people's music?
Yeah, I think I'm like, when I'm listening to other people's songs, I'm kind of like listening for the parts that really stand out to me and trying to like make like kind of an impression of their version. Like especially when I was doing these songs, I wasn't trying to go in and like learn note for note exactly what they were doing, but kind of like, okay, what's the part that I think that's standing out to me about this song, and like what are the parts that I love about each song, and how do I take those and make them my own, and kind of like, and then maybe like reframe the rest. So it made me think about what I like about these songs, and I think that'll probably inform the music I'm writing now and in the future. It was cool to just go back and study these songs that I love.
Yeah. So have you been writing since you've been locked down?
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of writing, some on my own and a lot of like Zoom co-writes. I've been
How does
doing
that
like
work?
2 of those a week. It's just like this, basically, except you have guitars and you can't play together, but you kind of like say, oh, I have this verse, and then the other person's like, oh, what if we put like this melody in there? It's really fun.
Ah,
I like
and
it
who
because
are
I
you
don't have
writing
to
with?
leave my house. A lot of different people. I've written a little bit with, I wrote one song with my friend Sierra Hall that was fun. A lot of like friends here in Nashville, but then it's fun with Zoom too. You can really write with people from all over the place. So that was
Yeah,
something I hadn't done before with co-writing. I've always just written with people in person. So
right.
opens up a whole new world.
Yeah, this whole Zoom thing is it showed up at the right time, I guess, because
I know. Like, how long has this been around for? I only heard about it in like March.
yeah, same here. But it's great. Yeah. We've talked about a couple of the tracks on the album, and I was wondering if there's any that you particularly like to talk about that stand out for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on a couple of them. Like Little Lost, I think, is one of my very favorites. The other one I love is, well, I love all the songs, but Standing on the Moon really to me is so special because it's, again, like a song from where I grew up. The Grateful Dead started in Palo Alto, which is where I grew up.
Right?
And that song really makes me think of home. And especially right now when I'm far away from home and I can't be with my family. I don't know when I'll get to be with them again. And kind of missing where I grew up. So that song took on a new meaning for me this year, which is why we used a lyric from it as the title of the album. But I'd
Ah,
rather be with
yes.
you. A little on the nose for quarantine times, but and the other one I really had fun recording was Mirrored Heart, and that one is the one on the album that we didn't add other people to. That's just me singing and playing.
Ah, yeah.
So that was the most stripped down arrangement.
And that's probably the most contemporary song on the record. Was it on her album this
Yeah,
last year? Yeah.
yeah, that one and the Harry Styles song came out in the last year. So those are the two contemporary ones, I guess.
So do you listen to much of that stuff? Because you get the idea when you hear somebody who's doing Americana, all they do is listen to Neil Young all day long. So
I listen to all sorts of stuff. Like I do like pop music. I like music. I kind of lately have been like listening to stuff that's just come out just because I don't know. I kind of like to know what's going on right now.
right, right.
But I do go back and listen to older music.
Yeah, who's playing the pedal steel on the Dead tune on "Standing on the Moon"?
I think that's Rich Hinman. He played pedal steel on a lot.
Cool. So was it strange putting this album out at this time? Have you gotten much feedback from your fans and people who've heard it? Is it a different experience for you?
I think because I recorded it in quarantine, like I was prepared for
Yeah,
it. Like I have friends who had albums that were going to be released and they thought they would have whole tours planned and be doing a proper release. And so for them, it was really jarring. But for me, I'm like, every little comment I see or like person who shares the album, I'm like, oh, yay, people are actually listening to it. Cool. So it's been really exciting. I think people are liking it. I think that people really need new music to listen to right now because a lot of people are struggling. So that's been really rewarding to put it out. The one weird thing is like, I'm like, well, now what do I do? I would normally like be touring this for a while,
right,
but since it's covers, I'm kind of like, oh, that's nice. Like I can just put it out and then keep writing my own music, not go tour and not write for a while. I have a hard time writing on tour. So it
right.
felt like it was kind of like a good project for right now. It felt like.
Yeah, and I assume you have a band that you play with and guys.
Yeah, I miss my band.
So yeah, that must be killer to not be able to play together.
I know, I really miss playing with them.
Oh, well, hopefully it won't last too much longer. As far as the music that you're writing now, that will hopefully come out in say 6 months or a year or whatever, can you give us a clue as to what kind of direction you're headed?
I don't really know how to say that yet because I'm just writing songs. Like there's no real arrangements. I'm just kind
Right.
of like writing and trying to. I do really want to have like a clear. I think this album made me realize that I want to have a clear kind of message that I'm putting forward with my songs. Maybe like a cohesive statement.
Right.
So I'm trying to dig a little deeper with this next batch of songs and figure out what's important. for
Cool. Yeah, I think it's
me
going to be
to put
interesting
out
when all
into
of
the
this
world.
music comes out that was written during the lockdown, and we're going to be deluged with
I
stuff.
know, a lot of songs about being alone in your house.
Yeah. Oh well.
Everyone I
We're
know is like, yeah, another lonely day.
well, hopefully things are good in Nashville, because I mean we're sitting here in New Zealand watching all the stuff going on, just going, oh my goodness. And I moved here from Rochester, New York, which is now having a big hubbub going on there. So
Yeah,
it's just crazy. And
dang.
the election's coming, things will change.
I
Hopefully,
know. We'll
we'll see
see
what
what
happens.
happens.
Yeah, but in the meantime, thank you for talking to me. I really appreciate it. Enjoyed the
Yeah, of
album
course.
immensely. It's just great hearing all these songs. And there's been quite a few covers albums coming out during this time. I don't know if you were aware of it or not, but it's hearing all these songs in a different format is very cool. So thank you. Okay, well, thank you very much. Have a
Yeah,
good
thank
day.
you, Marty. Thanks for having me.
You betcha. Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.